Welcome to Friendly Math 101. Today's lesson is over SSS and SAS, and we will discuss what those are. So these are two ways to prove two triangles are congruent. SSS stands for side, side, side. Which means if you have two triangles and all three of their sides are congruent to each other, then they are congruent. So you have one side is congruent to one of the other, the second side is congruent to one of the other, the third side is congruent to one or the other, then this proves congruency. So these are, spelled it wrong, congruent. So that's one way to prove congruency. The second one is side, angle, side. Which means if you have two triangles, two of their sides have to be congruent, and the angle in the middle of the two sides has to be congruent. So if we had this first side's congruent and the second side's congruent, the angle in the middle of these two sides have to be congruent. So this angle has to be equal to that angle there. Has to be in the same exact order. So side, angle, side, side, angle, side. So that would also prove congruency. Okay, so in our examples, we are going to determine yes or no, are the triangles congruent, and how do we know? So if it's congruent, is it by side, 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 or side, angle, side? So here's our first example. Okay, automatically we can see that we have side AB is congruent to DE, side BC is congruent to EF, side CA is congruent to DF, which means all three sides are equal to one of the other. So yes, these are congruent. Congruent. And the reason is side, side, side. That's how we know that they're congruent. It's also helpful to write the congruency statement. Because these triangles are in a different order, we want to see what sides correspond to what. So I'm going to label this triangle, first one, ABC. I want to write the order of the letters that are congruent to ABC. So AB is congruent to DE. So AB, the same order would be DE, and then obviously the last one would be F. Okay, moving on to our next example. Okay, so automatically I see I have one angle and I have one side. I need another side to be able to label this side, angle, side, or SAS. Well, this side BD is actually the same for this triangle and this triangle. So this is congruent to itself. So, yes, congruent. We know that because of side, angle, side. We have two sides congruent. The angle in the middle of the sides is also congruent. So this is side, angle, side. And we can write our congruency statement. So triangle ABD is congruent to triangle. Okay, so AB is congruent to BC, but I need to figure out if I should call it BC or CB. Okay, so BD is congruent to BD, which means BD has to be in the same order. And so it's actually CBD. We read it backwards. CBD. So CB is congruent to AB. That's good. BD is congruent to BD. That's good. Okay, and here's our last example. Now we see we have two sides and an angle, so you might automatically think these are congruent. However, it has to be the angle in between the two sides, which would mean these angles need to be congruent for us to say that these two triangles are congruent. We don't have that, so we don't know. So we really don't know if it's congruent. So I'm just going to say no, not congruent from the information that we're given. Thank you for watching, and for more math tutorials, please subscribe to our channel, Friendly Math 101.